Let's pick a field, folks. Here we are back again, affectionately known as the Nerdcast. I'm Mark Etheridge. I'm here with Kendall Rogers, Aaron Fitt, and we're going to pick our field of 64 based on the games as of April 21st. So we come to you, and what we're going to try to do is go through. We're going to pick our top 16 hosts. We're going to pick the at-larges. We're going to pick the automatics, and at the end, we're going to have a fully formed field. This is based on projecting how teams are going to finish. So there's going to be a little bit of wizardry going on as we try to predict the future. And the other part of this is we really want to focus on, now that we're 6 weeks into conference play in many of these conferences, looking and seeing, now we can look at conference records a little bit. And tonight we want to dive into what does that really mean if so and so is, has a really, really strong conference record versus somebody who doesn't, and see what would we do if we were on the committee and we were faced with these kinds of decisions. So, guys, are you ready to get rolling?
Let's do this.
I'm ready, Generalissimo. Thanks for having me on your program.
Absolutely, dude. Let's fire away, and I don't think it's going to be really hard to pick our number one seed. It's going to be the same as last week. It's going to be the Longhorns.
Yep.
Wow.
14-3 against Quad 1, which leads the country.
Yeah, they're in a good spot right now.
Interestingly enough, though, number 2 in the RPI behind Georgia. Obviously, they swept Georgia, so they should be ahead of them. But Georgia is still clinging to the number 1 spot.
Yeah, because the season is more than 3 days long, and that's what we focus on. So
it is wild to me, though, that Georgia has 15 wins. 15 of its 33 wins are against Quad 4 opponents, and they're number 1 in the RPI. Some of this stuff is just bewildering at times.
Yeah, I think part of it is their losses have come on the road, and so they're not getting hammered with those home losses.
Indeed, seven of their 9 losses on the road.
Mm-hmm.
To your point.
Mm-hmm. 2 for me is still Arkansas. What do you guys say?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Anybody else you want to discuss there, Kendall?
Yeah, well, I was going to bring up Clemson and then Georgia. I mean, the problem with Georgia is Arkansas is 3 full games ahead of them in the SEC standings. That's tough to get around.
At this point, Georgia at 10-8 in the SEC is a little bit lower for me, despite the high RPI. Clemson is an interesting suggestion. Now, both these teams, Clemson and Arkansas, have actually faced among the weakest conference opponents. Something that Mark wanted to bring up was conference strength of schedule. Both of them, their conference strength of schedules are 13th out of the 16 teams in their league. So that's something to, but I mean, it affects both.
I will say this,
however.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this for Clemson. If you combine the Q1 and Q2, they've got 19 wins, or 18 wins against Q1 and Q2. Arkansas has 9.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty loud.
Yeah. One thing about Arkansas, and you mentioned their SEC strength of schedule has not been real challenging so far by SEC standards. Guess what it is in the last 4 games? It's number 1. It is the toughest remaining schedule, even tougher than Tennessee, who's also got just a brutal stretch.
Yeah.
So, we're projecting. We're not looking at it as is. And then you can read all this in the Daily Dish from Monday if you want to see all these stats. It'll end up being Arkansas will end up being the 5th hardest schedule, based on what's already happened and what we project going forward. So not going to get dinged for that, certainly.
A couple more things to consider here. In our super secret spreadsheet that you sent us today, which is fantastic, by the way. Record against teams that were in our projected field of 64 last week. Okay. And that also includes the next 4 out. So it's really our projected top 68 from last week. Arkansas 9-7, Clemson 8-5. Those are both considerably fewer wins against those teams than, for instance, a Vanderbilt, which is 15-8. I mean, twice as many wins, just about as Clemson against teams in the field. Auburn 17-10, LSU even 15-6, and LSU. I'm wondering, is that maybe the happy medium where you got a 15-6 against teams in the field? You've got, a 12-6 SEC record, only a game behind Arkansas. The overall record is comparable. In fact, identical, 34-7. Identical, as the great Lane Smith would say. That's a deep cut. And I don't know, but I mean, non-conference strength of schedule is a blemish for LSU. 261. Arkansas 133, Clemson 119. So I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing LSU into the mix, but it's interesting that they've got all those wins against the field, if you will, but their non-conference strength schedule is still much lower.
It is. Looking at how these teams will project to finish, so that's the other part of this. They've all got really challenging schedules down the stretch. I've got Arkansas finishing second. I've got them at 20-10, and LSU at 19-11 in conference play. And again, how much does conference records do they matter as much as they typically do? But I think if they're comparable, then maybe they do. And in this case, LSU would be the 9th. Arkansas would be the 5th. They would be fairly comparable. The difference would be LSU does host Arkansas, and certainly part of that projection is LSU winning that series. So maybe I'm talking in circles too. It's my turn to do this. It does exemplify what we're doing when we're trying to determine how to parse these teams.
I kind of like Clemson as the number 2 team here, the projected ACC champ. I mentioned the 18 wins against Q1 and Q2. Those are just they still haven't lost a series.
Yeah,
I mean that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I was kind of I think land there as well. I think Clemson makes a lot of sense in the 2 spot.
Okay.
I think I'm still pretty comfortable with Arkansas in the 3 hole.
I think
I just didn't like them in the 2 hole, but I like them in the 3 hole.
Okay.
And then I think you kind of have to look at LSU, Vanderbilt. I mean, I guess, Georgia at some point as well, but I think I'd have LSU and Vanderbilt ahead of Georgia right now, especially since Vanderbilt just swept Georgia and is ahead of the standings and has a lot of better metrics.
And then there's Tennessee out there.
And Tennessee, of course. Right. Yeah, what do you do with them?
Yeah, what big thing about Tennessee, 12-2 against Q1.
That's loud.
It's really loud.
Yeah, so look at that. Yeah, that 12-2 is loud.
Interesting that it's 12-2 against Q1, but only 10-6 against teams in our field last week. There's some little discrepancy there.
Yeah, and that'll be fascinating to follow through the year because just for everyone, we're tracking records against last week's field +4 or next 4. And you compare that to the quads. And honestly, one of the reasons I wanted to do this is I'm not a fan of the whole quad thing because I do feel like because it weights, and for those of you who may not know, we'll pop what the quads, their definitions are, but it values road wins against RPI teams much more heavily than neutral and certainly than home. And I feel like that's already baked in to the RPI because of how road wins are counted for 1.3 wins.
Yeah.
And home wins are counted for 0.7. So I feel like you're double counting there, and I don't like it. So this is just a way to offset it and just have some checks and balances here.
I'll throw this out there for Tennessee as well. This is one where we've got an outlier between the RPI ranking, which is 12th at the moment, which is surprising. But the DSR ranking is 3, And the KPI ranking, which we know, again, this year, we know the committee is using the KPI, not yet using DSR. DSR probably going to come next year, we think. But DSR is still very instructive here. But KPI is 4, DSR is 3, but the RPI is 12. So it kind of feels like a team that's maybe undervalued by
those
the
home
RPI.
games.
Yeah,
Tennessee
that's
just
true.
they played 3 neutral site games in non-conference, and that's it. Everything else is home.
And a 237 non-conference strength of schedule. Compare that with a team like Vanderbilt with a 102 non-conference strength of schedule, and only 1 game behind in the standings.
And traditionally the committee does look at that non-conference strength of schedule, and if the teams are comparable, if there's a cut line, then it's rewarded for challenging yourself. But you got to be comparable, and so that's up to us to decide.
So I like the way Vanderbilt's trending. I think what they did this week was super loud, sweeping Georgia. I know it feels maybe a little early for Vanderbilt, but I mean, they're 3 in the RPI and they're 11-7 in the league, and they just swept the number 1 RPI team. So I don't think it's actually too early to talk about them. I think it's
the problem is their last 4 are all tough.
Yeah.
They don't play Missouri, right? So that's another thing I wrote about is the SEC records. You typically don't have a team like Missouri who's just not competitive right now. And those teams that are lucky enough to play them have 3 extra wins that are a lot easier to come by than anyone else you played. And Vandy didn't play them, right? Neither did Tennessee. And I do think that factors into this.
Yeah. That said, Tennessee's conference schedule ranked to this date is 12th out of the 16.
And it's second hardest going forward in the last 4.
So query how strong do we think they're going to finish against that schedule? They might win all those series because they're Tennessee. They're really good. But they might struggle against it. They've struggled the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
So I don't know where this leaves us, guys. Who wants to speak up in favor of a team?
I'd probably go LSU here. That would be my pick.
We're projecting them to win that series at home against Tennessee
and Arkansas.
Yeah. That's at home also. Yeah. Yeah, good point. I like that too. I like LSU here.
Okay, so next you have Vandy, Georgia, Tennessee. Anybody else you want to add to this SEC cluster?
I think that's the SEC cluster. The question is, who else from outside the SEC?
I like Tennessee ahead of Georgia and Vandy,
just based on faith in who they are.
Yeah, I think they'll beat Tennessee, and I think they'll beat Vanderbilt at home too.
Yeah, that series is in Knoxville, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I'm good with that.
Yeah. And certainly at this point, I would put Vandy ahead of Georgia just because it's last week.
Yep, I agree.
What about a team like North Carolina entering the equation here or entering the discussion? Tar Heels.
Go ahead.
Tar Heels 19 wins against Q1 and Q2. 8-4 on the road. 13-8 in the conference. Here's who they've played so far in conference: Stanford, at Louisville, at BC, Miami, Duke, Wake, at VT, and they finish with at Pitt. You got to figure they'll win that series. NC State at home. Go either way, and then at Florida State.
So you've got North Carolina, Florida State, and Oregon State would probably be the 3 for me. That would be in contention for one of these last couple spots. I don't know how to break down North Carolina versus Florida State.
They play in Tallahassee. Yep. Isn't it Tallahassee last weekend?
They play in Tallahassee, which I think is notable.
Yeah, I mean, what's tough about these two teams is, one thing we just mentioned is non-conference teams to schedule. FSU's 91, North Carolina's 92. UNC's 8-4 on the road. Florida State's 9-3. So, I mean, ultimately, guys, like I think where I come down on this is who do we think is going to win the head-to-head?
Yeah, you'd probably
Because
just
they're very
favor the home
comparable.
team. You'd probably just favor the
Play
home
the
team.
odds. Yeah,
Correct.
I will say, last week we had Oregon State as a top 8, and I think I probably would be inclined to keep them in that 8 spot.
No, I like Oregon State in the top 8, and here's why. I think the committee is going to recognize they had a very challenging offseason in terms of scheduling. Yet they had the number 59 non-conference with the schedule. And by the way, guys, they're 10-3 on the road and 9-3 in neutral sites. That's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean their schedule is very away from home heavy. They have had to play some, Cal Poly and Irvine, two of the best teams in the West. They've won series against them both. They have more good series ahead, obviously Oregon and Iowa, Hawaii. I think there's more opportunity. I think their RPI is going to be fine. And I think that if they finish in like the top 12 or so, and they're already 30-7, you got to think they're going to cruise past 40 wins in the regular season. I like the way it's shaping up for them as a top 8. So I mean, you could put them even at 6 if you want, or you can keep them behind a couple more teams. But I think that I definitely like them in the top 8.
Yeah, I like Oregon State, Florida State, and Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I think so too, in some order.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I think let's look at the schedule. Let's look at the records real quick. I think I actually, strangely enough, have more conviction in Georgia over Vanderbilt long term. So here's Georgia's remaining schedule.
They play Missouri.
Yeah, Oklahoma at home, at Missouri, at Bama, A&M at home. Last 2 aren't easy. But, I mean, they're probably going to win at least 5 of their next 6.
Yeah,
I've got them at 18-12.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely like a top 10 seed. Right now I have a hard time putting them ahead of Vanderbilt just based on what we just saw.
Right.
I can't get past that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, do either of them have to be in the top 8?
Don't have to be, but I think it makes. I think at this point Vanderbilt has earned a spot.
I like what they did in non-conference. I mean, so many SEC programs, and you know who you are, don't leave the building for non-conference other than 3 neutral site games. And Vandy definitely does that, and I think that's the kind of thing the committee notices and rewards.
Yeah, of course, one of the 2 weekends they went 1-2.
Because they didn't play a northern team who'd not been outside yet.
Well, actually, they played Connecticut and lost.
Well, Connecticut's a different animal. But you see what I'm saying? You can stack wins.
Oh, absolutely.
And buy 3 wins, or you can go out and challenge yourself.
Yeah.
If I'm a power conference Southern team, by the way, I'm trying to schedule UConn in week 1 or 2 every year.
Yeah.
Because you got a pretty good chance to win the series, and then UConn's going to rattle off a whole bunch of wins later, and that's going to be a really good RPI builder later because they do it every year. They always come together.
Agree.
I think for me, in terms of the next couple of teams, I think I like Florida State, Oregon State, and then I think y'all have convinced me enough. Probably Vandy is 8.
Yeah. I think I'm fine with that. I could even.
I'm pretty bullish on FSU.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. That's a satisfactory compromise there. I think we're splitting hairs on those teams.
Okay. So that would be our top 8. So Texas, Clemson, Arkansas, LSU, Tennessee, Florida State, Oregon State, Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So then the next spots, I mean, I think Georgia, North Carolina in some order are next.
Yeah, yes. I think I'd go UNC, North Carolina, or excuse me, UNC, Georgia in that order. Just to avoid it. SEC versus SEC there.
Okay.
With that.
Then the next group, you're looking at Coastal, West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn.
Arizona.
Arizona, yeah.
Yep. I think those are the right teams.
I still think the committee as of today would hold Auburn in pretty high esteem. Number 4 RPI. The league record needs to get better. It's kind of a weird resume, but I mean, 11 wins against Q1, and here are their series of wins in the conference: Vanderbilt, Kentucky on the road, Alabama, and then LSU sweeping them at home.
Yeah.
I mean, those are pretty solid series wins.
It's the number one to this point hardest SEC schedule.
Yep.
And it's 17-10 against the field last week, which is the most of anybody. I'm with you. I think I actually do like Auburn in this next spot.
And even when you play it out and count the future games, it remains number one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean they finished with Mississippi State at Tennessee, South Carolina at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
So
their issue, Mark, on Selection Monday might not be RPI, it might be conference record.
Yeah, I agree. And my rebuttal to that, and what I hope the committee is cognizant of, is how that conference record is constituted. Right, it's the hardest schedule and the hardest conference. Their 30 games are harder than anyone else's 30 conference games in the entire country.
Yep, well said. But they're 9-9 right now, and I still think you probably if you can get to 16-14 against that schedule, I like their chances
that's better.
A lot more than
because you aren't breaking a precedent, because 15-15 is not hosted.
Yep. Although, have we had somewhere 15-15 regular season and then a conference?
Yeah, they went. I think it was Virginia Tech that won they won 4 games in the conference tournament and ended up
maybe Florida State done that. 15. Maybe there's been some
examples. Got it. I can look it up.
No, don't worry about it. I think the point is valid though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Auburn makes sense here.
Yeah, they're in this group. I don't necessarily have to have them 11th, but I do feel like they're.
Who do you like?
I kind of like them 11th.
Do you?
Either them or Coastal.
Okay, I can live with that.
Coastal over Arizona. I will say Arizona.
I would have Arizona ahead of West Virginia.
Yeah, I would too. And again, it's not just head to head, although that's part of it. It's head to head in Morgantown. Arizona won 2 out of 3, but Arizona's also they're only one. Well, they're 12-6 in the league. West Virginia's 13-3, but Arizona's played the hardest Big 12 schedule to this point. West Virginia's played the 12th hardest. So just in all the metrics, I mean, Arizona 10-7 against the field last week. West Virginia 2-2.
I was going to make the same point.
Should Arizona be ahead of Coastal even? Like at this point, like Arizona?
Well, here's the thing I like about Coastal.
Yeah, is
if you're a Sun Belt team, it matters like how you try to schedule a non-conference. And they have the number 19 non-conference strength of schedule. They're 11-6 on the road, higher RPI than Arizona and West Virginia. I like it. I mean, they're 2 full games ahead of Troy, another ranked team in the Sun Belt. 2 full games.
Yeah. The difference is Coastal, they're sweeping their series, and Southern Miss and Troy are winning 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been the difference lately. Yep. Coastal, I mean, I think that's good for me. That works.
Okay, so we have 2 spots left. Candidates. I think Irvine would be a candidate.
Mm-hmm. So just TCU. I don't think they'll be in this week, but just to kind of give everybody a heads up, because I wrote about this a little bit yesterday. Georgia Tech was the top 8 last week. The Jackets down to 27 in the RPI today, but they were the number 7 overall national seed last week, so we can at least put them in the discussion. I don't think they're in as a host this week, more than likely, but put them on the board. TCU was another team that lost this series over the weekend, was the 11th national seed for us last week. Ole Miss is another team I feel like is probably dropping out of the mix this week. There were 13 last week. Ole Miss, guys, is down to 22. And then UCLA was our 16 seed last week. The Bruins lost a road series to Oregon, but still, sitting at 17 in the RPI. The only issue for the Bruins, I think they're 2 full games back of Iowa in the Big Ten standings now.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know what Iowa's conference strength schedule is, but I think it's low. It's poor. UCLA is 6th in the 100-team Big Ten. So yeah, I still think UCLA is very much in this discussion. I like UCLA, Irvine, maybe TCU. UCLA, Irvine, TCU is UCLA, Irvine, TCU is 3 teams for 2 spots. I think is where I come down.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia Tech at this point that was a costly sweep. They're 14-7 in the league still, but it's also the 15th hardest schedule in the ACC out of 16 teams. So they've feasted on the bottom feeders. But it's 10-8 Q1 for Georgia Tech. So
can I throw 2 more teams at you here?
Sure.
Please.
You also have Louisville, who's 10-8 in the ACC and 18 in the RPI. And then you have Oklahoma, who I feel like Oklahoma needs to win that series this weekend at Georgia. But, they're 10-8 with a 19 RPI. Louisville's an interesting team for me.
And keep an eye on NC State, a little lower in the RPI, but it's 12-6 in the ACC now.
Yeah.
And it feels like, they're 33 in the RPI. Their RPI will probably continue to climb. They've got Clemson this weekend at home. Now, if they win that series 2 out of 3, let's say, and they get to 14-7 in the ACC, okay, now we're cooking with gas. We got Miami on the road, at North Carolina. Those are, at this point, Miami on the road feels like a test, and certainly at North Carolina. And then they finish with Stanford at home. If they go 6-6 even in those last 4 series to get to 18-12, I assume the RPI would be in roughly where it needs to be.
Yeah.
That's another one to really keep an eye on. And they just won the series against Louisville 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one who would not be one of the 16 this week, but who you could project there is Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to probably finish 16-14. Their RPI right now is in the top 10. If that remains, and that's a big if, then that's typically a host.
Yeah, it's another one to certainly have on the radar.
They've got work to do, but that would be one.
Yeah, and they have Missouri this weekend.
Yeah, they do.
It's interesting because at this point, I kind of feel like NC State is going to wind up hosting, but I don't think we're quite ready to pull the trigger on that. But I bet you if they win 2 out of 3 this week against Clemson, which I kind of think they might at home, I don't know. Maybe not. Clemson just wins. That's not so gimme. But if they do next week, I suspect we'll have them as a host. But maybe we need to wait a week on that. Like Oklahoma, if you win a series at Georgia, then you move up. But everyone agree with that thinking?
Yeah, I want to wait. Yeah.
I will say this: I still like UCLA. I think is one of these spots. Yeah. The thing about UCLA is I don't really like, making just crazy judgments off of one weekend. That was their first series loss of the year. It was on the road. They've got a sweep over Cal Poly, who's a top 20 RPI team. They've got a midweek win over UCI. They play UCI again tomorrow. I think I still like the Bruins for one of these spots. Number 32 non-conference sheet of schedule. So they check a lot of boxes.
I agree. I kind of like UCLA and either TCU or Irvine. I guess that's what I said before. TCU,
one spot left. Yeah.
TCU did just lose their weekend to UCF on the road, 2 out of 3. They had a 1-3 week. Also lost to DBU. Midweek,
but I still think I think Irvine has to win that series at Cal Poly.
Yeah. And so
I think I like the Frogs,
but Irvine could win that series at Cal Poly. Irvine's good.
Yeah. I picked the Cal Poly, but yeah, it could go either way.
That works for me.
Go to
That's where I
TCU
was
for
leaning
now.
to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's our next 8. We rattled through the first 8 earlier. The last 8: North Carolina, Georgia, Auburn, Coastal Carolina, Arizona, West Virginia, UCLA, TCU.
Boy, who could we send to TCU for that 1 versus 16?
Yeah. And they're a 2 seed at this point, dude.
Let's get into that.
Let's indeed. On to part 2 of the Nerdcast, conference by conference look at our at-large candidates and automatic qualifiers. And as always, we start in the Cristianaro Athletic Conference, also known as the America East. How about your Fighting Nick Durbas? The Maine Black Bears in first place at 10-5.
CG, ye a little faith in Nick Durba. Come on, man.
He would never doubt it. So we've got make that change, I say. Maine now with a game and a half lead on Bryant and NJIT. Maine replaces NJIT as our AQ. On to the American Athletic. Last week, this was a 1-bid league with just UTSA, and I think that's still the case.
Yep.
UTSA
FAU would be the closest RPI team at 66.
Yeah.
Not happening.
UTSA 2 games up on South Florida at the moment. I still think they're tracking toward net large. Should they get knocked off? But we'll see if their RPI holds up. But for now, I mean, they're 30-10. I think they're
we'll say
good.
this. I mean, if you look at the remaining schedule, it's just really hard to see this happening. But ECU did go up about 18 to 19 spots in the RPI over the last week. And they still do have a series against UTSA left. The problem is that's pretty much all they have left in terms of good RPI teams. Well, no, I guess they have NC State tomorrow night, or excuse me, tonight as we record this, who's a 33 RPI. So they got essentially have 4 games left against decent RPI teams. So that looks like a team that's going to have to win the automatic bid.
Yeah, for what it's worth, our old friend, the RPI Needs Report at Boys World, says East Carolina has 18 games left and needs to win 16 of them to climb into the top 45 of the RPI. Now, that's just a rough guidepost, but it just shows you what they got to do. It's not going to be easy. To the A10 we go. Let's see. We had George Mason last week. Are you A10? Rhode Island currently has overtaken George Mason for first place after sweeping Dayton this past week. They got a 1-game
Mason
lead.
has them at home this weekend. I still like George Mason.
No faith in little Rhodey.
Nobody rolls into Fairfax, Virginia, and pushes George Mason around.
Yeah, I'm fine with status quo on that, but certainly if URI wins that series, we could make that change next week.
Also learned this evening that GMU is in Fairfax.
It sure is, yeah.
Yep.
Good note. The ACC we go. All right, we've got Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina already in as hosts.
Mm-hmm. We've got a team to add this week, fellas.
We've only got 3 hosts, right, in the ACC? I think that's right.
Yes.
I feel like they're going to wind up with more than that. I just don't know who it's going to be yet. And maybe they don't, but NC State still feels like Georgia Tech could be.
I would say this week with Clemson, Florida State, UNC, Duke, NC State, Wake Forest, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, all in last week, including Virginia. I think it's time to flip Miami for Virginia.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Just
at this point
for the Cavs.
That was they needed to play that series against Florida State. That was unfortunate for them. It's unfortunate for America. Certainly our condolences are with the people down there in Tallahassee. But tough break for Virginia. I mean, they actually fell to 95 in the RPI. They're in the 80s last week. They needed those road games.
They dropped 11 spots without playing a game.
Yeah.
Well, they also lost a midweeker, right?
Yeah.
Oh, to Liberty, 10-3.
So let's go ahead and Miami, by the way, by sweeping Georgia Tech, all of a sudden they're up to 36th in the RPI. They're 9-9 in the league. They're up to 24-7 overall.
Yeah.
They are trending
Aaron, what does our friend Mr. Needs say about Virginia the rest of the season in terms of their ability to be in the top 45? So, I mean, there's a pathway. I mean, they play on the road, Virginia Tech 32 RPI, Miami at home, and at Georgia Tech 27 RPI. So there seems to be a pathway.
Yeah, they've got 18 games left in the regular season. Needs report says if they win about 13 of them, 13 or 14, depending on the distribution of home versus road, they could get in the top 45, and that's heading into the conference tournament where they could also boost themselves. So they're not dead, but I mean they need to get after it. At this point, they're officially in prove it mode, but they're still going to win the national title. So keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Any interest in a Boston College or a Notre Dame? Are they on the board?
I don't think so, because I just look at, BC is still just 19 and 20 overall. I know that that was a great win weekend for them against Wake Forest. They're up to 9 and 12 in the league. They're 50 in the RPI. They need to do more for me to believe.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame's interesting just because they have Cal at home, Louisville at home, and then they finish with Miami on the road. I mean, if they won all three of those series, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I'd project that, but yeah, I'm in wait and see mode on the Irish. I think they won all three of those. Let's have that discussion.
And get to 13 and 17 with kind of a roughly, slightly above 500 overall record. And I don't know. I still feel like it's a real uphill battle for them. They're alive. They're on the radar, which they hadn't been really. So good for them. But yeah, need to do more. Hokies are and the Deeks right now are both kind of like hanging around in there. They're fine, 10 and 11 in the league. RPI is 26-32, but it's just feels like it could get a little bit sticky for them. They need to right the ship. Let's go to the ASUN. We've had Stetson. Let's see here. Stetson is now 16 and 2. Austin P is 15 and 3 in the league. They're both continuing to keep on keeping on. We can go status quo here, although, I mean, again, it's going to be a one bid league, regardless. No reason to make the change, but obviously it's unfortunate those teams don't play in the regular season, but both feel like be very dangerous in regionals and having good years.
Yeah, the Big 12 is interesting. Last week we had Kansas State, Arizona, TC, West Virginia, Kansas, all in. And what's really interesting about the Big 12 is it feels like the top of the league's kind of separating itself a little bit. I mean, right now, if you look at Kansas State, who's in 6th place, they're 2 games up from the 7th place team, Baylor. Kansas State, though, one of those teams that kind of keep an eye on down the stretch. I mean, they're losing a little steam, 5 straight losses. They're 2 and 9 against Q1. They're 3 and 7 in the last 10, down to 44 in the RPI. So turning downward a little bit, but still a really talented club. But otherwise, Baylor guys still down to 71. Oklahoma State, a team that we thought could potentially make a move this past weekend, went 1-1 against Houston, got blown out by OU. Losing record, still 68. This is a 6-bid league. There's not really another team that would be in the mix as of right now.
Yeah, no change. K-State kind of slipping toward the bubble, but still okay for now.
K-State also, by the way, with a member of their athletic department on the committee.
Okay, so they're safe. We'll go to the Big East.
Mm-hmm.
We had last week, we made the switch to St. John's, and guess what? That didn't go great.
It did not.
As short-lived. The Johnnies swept at Creighton, also lost at midweek to Hofstra. They are now down to 76 in the RPI, and they're 6 and 3 in the league. They're now tied. Well, I guess there's kind of a stack up at the top here. You've got 2 teams at 8 and 4, two teams at 6 and 3. So they're all 4 teams statistically tied with a 667 winning percentage at the top here. Xavier and UConn, though, are the 2 teams.
I like going UConn.
Xavier beat them. Didn't they sweep them?
Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, Xavier beat them 2 out of 3.
Oh,
2 out of 3 at Xavier. But yeah, I think you could probably put Xavier in as the AQ right now.
Yeah.
Great rebound for them. After
and
that,
UConn on the bubble.
Yeah,
sure.
I think that's the play. Xavier replaces St. John's. And we'll add UConn to the sheet here.
Remember our opening weekend when UConn somehow lost to Missouri?
I was there for that game.
Oh.
And wrote about how Missouri is going to surprise people.
They surprised us, all right.
Yeah. I think we had a conversation about how many conference wins they would have.
By the way, Connecticut, and we'll talk about them a little bit more later, but they got a win over Vanderbilt on the weekend. They've got a road series win over Miami. They've got a midweek win over North Carolina. Some nice pieces of that resume.
Yeah. I mean, heck, they're 6-7 against Q1, which is better than a lot of teams even in our hosting discussion.
Yeah,
and a 46 RPI. And they've, they're obviously they struggled earlier. They're now up to 21-17 overall. So it's both Xavier and UConn scheduled well, took their lumps early, and have now kind of, largely righted the ship. So good for them. It feels like it could very well be a 2-bid league here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the Big South. High Point remains the pick, although they did lose it. They lost their series this weekend, right? To UNC Asheville at home, no less. So that makes it a little more interesting. High Point's lead is down to a game and a half over Upstate, but I still think we stick with High Point.
Okay.
Let's go to the Big Ten. I don't see a change here except for I think Iowa has strengthened its position. Last week we talked about how
I think they're automatic.
Yeah.
They were 30. They went up 36 spots in the RPI over last week by sweeping Michigan on the road.
Yeah. Did we have them as the automatic last week?
I think we had UCLA as
UCLA. Okay. I still think we can keep UCLA as the auto. I just think they're. I guess they did just lose that series to Oregon. I mean, you can even put Oregon as the auto if you want. Really, it's just who do you think is going to win the conference tournament is what it comes down to.
I believe we talked about this on the D1 Baseball podcast this morning, but I believe Shotgun had tweeted out that the West Coast schools was it 40-16 against the original Big Ten? Yeah.
It's not pretty.
So we're looking at a 4-bid league here with Iowa, UCLA, Oregon, and USC. And the only question is, who do you want to make the AQ right now?
What really stinks about this league too, like there's really not another option to even get in the mix at this point. I mean, Nebraska 7-11, they've got a losing record, 74. Like they have no shot unless they win the AQ.
Yeah, Michigan had been on our discussion sheet last week, and then they got swept at home, right, by Iowa. They're done. It just looks like a 4-bid league, assuming that one of those top 4 doesn't tumble, and it could be a 3-bid league potentially. But should we keep the Bruins as our AQ, or do you want to go to Oregon after this? I mean, it was at Oregon that series, so you could keep it if you want.
Okay. Usually we go with our highest seed,
which would be UCLA. So let's do that. So we'll keep that. All right, to the Big West remains, I think, a 2-bid league here with Irvine and Poly.
I mean, you can put UCSB on the board. I mean, probably not getting in, but I would leave them off. I mean, here's the thing. UCSB is sitting at 64 in the RPI, and here's who they have left. This is why all of a sudden I switch gears. RPI is 214, 165, 155, 270 on the weekend. Like, that's just going to go down.
They need to win at least 16 of their last 18 to finish in the top 45. And they could against that schedule, but let's wait on that one.
Wait a week. In Hawaii, would they be out?
Yeah, I think at this point,
losing record in conference, no shot.
They're down to 6th place in the league. The 56 RPI, that's not going to get it done. The CAA, of course, the Northeastern Athletic Conference, many people are calling it. The only team in the top 100 in the RPI is the pride of Brookline, Massachusetts, the Northeastern Huskies, 35 in the RPI with a 30-9 record. Great year for
I mean, the other thing about the Huskies, too, we were talking about this earlier. The other thing about the Huskies, too, is with as high as its RPI is, I mean, you got to feel like even if they didn't win their conference tournament, they continue winning the rest of the way, they're probably still getting in.
Right.
Unless they just go 0-2.
that could definitely be a stolen bid alert watch for somebody should they get upset at the conference tournament and still have that RPI roughly where it is now. They could steal a bid, if you will.
Yeah.
Conference USA, I think this is status quo here. Western Kentucky and DBU. They're currently tied for first. Patriots have won 9 in a row. Is that since losing that series to WKU? I believe they have not lost. So since the Sunday, they won the Sunday that series, and that includes wins against Oklahoma and TCU on the road in midweek. So DBU's trending.
Yep.
But we could probably stick with WKU based on the head-to-head there in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
But 2-bid league.
Yeah, I mean, Kennesaw State worth mentioning. 7 straight wins, 8-2 in their last 10, 55 RPI. I mean, they would not get in, but I mean, looking at their remaining schedule, at Liberty, at DBU, I mean, there's still some opportunities there to make a little bit of a move for the Owls.
Opportunities. They need to win those series in the road. If they do, they could pave their way.
Yep.
Southern State Athletic League.
5-game lead atop the conference standings for the Raiders.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Raiders here. Hashtag just win, baby. This is the second time today. It's my third podcast of the day. It's the second time I've invoked just win, baby. Go Raiders. On to the Ivy League. We've got Penn and Columbia tied for first. We had Penn last week.
They lost the series to Yale.
They did indeed. They've not played Columbia yet. Whatever. It's I
would go with Yale. Columbia and Penn both lost series to them.
Wait, so you want to go to Yale, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
They have series wins over Columbia and Penn.
Yeah, the only game back. Make that change. Yaleys. Yale replaces Penn.
The Quakers.
Okay.
Metro Atlantic, Fairfield.
Also known as the MAC. Stags are 16-2. They're not going to get an at-large, but I mean, my gosh, they're 29-9 with a 69 RPI. Like they're,
It might end up being a 3 seed.
Yeah, that is the case. A good year for those guys. As our man Patrick Ebert wrote last week. If you're interested in the Stags, go back and check out last week's D1 Spotlight on Fairfield. To the Mid-American Conference, we had Miami, Ohio. Ball State this weekend took 2 out of 3 at Bowling Green, who's also one of the better teams in the league. Ball State is now in first place. Miami, Ohio this week won 2 out of 3 at Central Michigan. We do not have a head-to-head yet between those two.
I would just stick with Miami.
I don't have a strong opinion. We can stick with the Red Hawks here. Although, I mean, at this point, gosh, Ball State is 29-12 overall. Miami's 21-18. Ball State's better in the RPI at 84. Miami's 114. It could change.
Whatever.
It could change.
Doesn't matter.
Come on. Of course it matters. Everything matters. All right, Ball State is in. So then Missouri Valley. Missouri State, I would say, remains the pick here. They're solo first at the moment, a game ahead of Murray State in Southern Illinois.
Although they did lose to Missouri in midweek, so that counts like 3 times.
They play them again Tuesday.
Is that disqualifying? Missouri State lost 2 out of 3 at UIC this week. UIC is only 10-26. That does not inspire a ton of confidence. Murray State has a better RPI. So does Southern Illinois. We have had Southern Illinois at various points as our team. Southern Illinois just swept Belmont. They lost the head-to-head at home to Missouri State, though. The Racers swept Valpo on the road this weekend. Valpo's not very good. I'm fine sticking with Missouri State, even though They did not have a very good week. Did not inspire confidence. They're in first place. Let's stick with them.
Mm-hmm.
Mountain West, Fresno State, a two-game lead over New Mexico, Nevada, and San Diego State. So we'll stick with Fresno.
Wonder Dogs.
NEC is, of course, still Central Connecticut, who is 17-1, 2 games ahead of Wagner and Long Island. And let's see, the Ohio Valley. We had Tennessee Tech. They had a bad weekend.
Yeah.
Swept by EIU.
Yeah. Is this the when all else fails go SEMO doctrine? Is that where we're at here?
Yeah, pretty much.
SEMO is now tied for first with SIUE. Do we have a head-to-head there?
Yeah, SEMO won the head-to-head.
All right, let's go SEMO.
Sorry, Joe.
SEMO replaces Missouri State.
No, Tennessee Tech.
I'm sorry, Tennessee Tech. Get it together, Fitzy. Patriot League, of course.
I really think we need to make a move in the Patriot League.
How dare you, sir? Crusaders remain in first place because they're a juggernaut. The pride of Worcester County. Sunk the Navy this past weekend. We'll stick with
ambush the Army.
Have they played Army yet?
Yeah, they played Army in midweek this past week randomly.
That's right. Yeah, anyway.
They've won 3 of 4 against Army this year. Wait, excuse me. They split a 4-gamer.
Yeah.
And they won 3 out of 5.
Okay. Wear it, Rogers.
Sorry.
I know you're a big Army guy, so that's a tough one for you. Go Crusaders. Onward. SEC. Here we go.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, so Tennessee, Arkansas, this is in no particular order. Tennessee, Arkansas, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, A&M, all safely in. How about A&M being in the safely in category at the moment?
Yeah.
Now, it's still not an easy finish. They still have at Texas versus LSU and at Georgia, along with 3 against Missouri. But obviously, we all think they're trending, and they're in right now. Mississippi State we had in last week, guys. They're now 6-12. They did not take care of business at home against Florida, which we thought they needed to do.
Yeah.
Mark, why don't you take it here?
Yeah, they're not playing particularly well. I mean, they had a good weekend in Tuscaloosa, and you think, oh, they've turned the corner, and then they dropped the series to Florida. Had just a couple of terrible innings that did them in. And, down the stretch, I mean, you're looking at going to Auburn. I would think they're 1-2. That one is probably realistic. That takes them to 7-14. They host Kentucky and Ole Miss. You think maybe they split those 3?
Yeah, I kind of think they split those 2. I don't think they win both.
Yeah. So that gets them to, 10 wins? And then they go to Mizzou.
So 13, you would think.
So they'd be 13-17 with the easiest, the 16th SEC conference strength schedule. So I certainly think they would be on the bobble, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that they would be a slam dunk in or out. The bad thing for me is just the optics of it, right? It's just there's not a good vibe in that program right now. Are they going to be able to finish strong? That's because this is all about projection. Are they able to get to this point? Because honestly, I feel like if they get to 14 wins, they're in. If they get to 13, it's going to depend on what everyone else does, and also how the committee views these monster conferences.
Yeah.
Do they look deeper than just conference record and look for other things as well?
Yeah.
And here's the other fly in the ointment. Shout out Dave Keilitz. Florida now has the same record as Mississippi State, 6-12. just won the head-to-head in Starkville.
Yep.
20 spots higher in the RPI. Florida is.
The problem is instead of going to Mizzou, they've already
Yeah.
played Mizzou. They go to Texas.
Yeah. They also go to South Carolina, though.
They host Arkansas and
And
was
they
it
host
Alabama?
Arkansas and Alabama.
In Alabama. So
Yeah.
let's say, let's see here.
I think it's
They
12
also-
or 18 is where they're going to land.
12
So
and 18,
here are the two things I do like about Florida. Is if you compare, if you're comparing two bubble teams, you're essentially like, hey, what do you like head to head here? Well,
Mhm.
Florida won the head to head on the road. Florida's non-conference strength of schedule is 32 versus Mississippi State well into the 230s.
Oof.
That to me, that's noticeable. And by the way, Scott Strickland is on the committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have Florida ahead of Mississippi State.
Yeah.
The concern though is just that's they're going to get swept at Texas, and that's going to just do them in.
I think
everyone else is getting swept there.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's just
I think this weekend felt to me like maybe a turning point for Florida. And I don't have a ton of conviction in it, but I have a little conviction that maybe
it wasn't pretty.
Yeah. Well, but they scored some runs.
Yeah.
They got Arkansas at home. I mean, would it shock you if they took 2 out of 3 at home from Arkansas at home? I would be surprised, but not shocked.
Yeah, I think their better opportunity would be taking 2 out of 3 from Alabama,
Well, certainly.
getting 1 from Arkansas, and sweeping South Carolina on the road, which is not going to be easy. South Carolina
is not.
They're showing some life.
Yeah.
So, and then they've got to get 1 at Texas.
Yeah, I think they could do it.
And that gets them to 12. No, that gets
Yeah.
them to 13. That gets them to 13.
I like their chances more than Mississippi State, and at this point, I think 13 is the number, not 14. 13 max. I mean, it might be 12. Both these teams might miss, but
yeah, for a 14th team to get in out of the SEC, Mississippi State would have had to have some like really good non-conference resume or something.
Yeah, and it just
not props
there.
them up.
Or they get to 14 wins, and they're going to get in.
Yeah.
Yeah, which they could.
Right.
But for now, I say, based on what we just saw in Starkville, let's go Florida and Mississippi State out.
Okay.
I just don't see 14 when these teams are both kind of very, very wobbly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. SoCon, we had UNCG, who lost a series at Upstate this week, but they're still
I'm still
in
good with
first
them.
place. I mean, you have East Tennessee State, though. Just took 2 or 3 out Mercer.
ETSU just lost a series to UNCG 2 weekends ago.
That's true.
That's why he made the switch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just hold what we got.
Okay, can hold.
Yeah. There is a change in the Southland. I would go Southeastern Louisiana after they took that series from UTRGV over the weekend.
Yeah. So Sela in, UTRGV out.
They're on the bubble. 31 RPI.
And McNeese
26-13 overall.
Or McNeese
in.
Yeah, I mean they're all 3 in the mix.
So should we go?
They're not
McNeese?
getting 3 bids though.
No. McNeese as the auto. Is that who do we have last week as the auto?
UTRGV.
Was it?
Okay.
And they're at UTRGV this weekend, so I kind of like Sela here.
I like McNeese, I think, as the auto.
Even though they're on the road.
It doesn't matter for.
Yeah, I guess they won the series against Sela though.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go with McNeese's auto then for now.
And is Southeastern going to get an at-large?
That's I guess what I'm wondering.
Let's ask the committee chairman.
Yeah,
we could. They are 30-9. 54
put them on
RPI.
the board, and then we probably trim them.
At this point, would you have them behind or ahead of UTRGV? Again, they just won the head-to-head, but they're also 23 spots lower than the RPI.
You're not
I
going
would
to
have
put
them.
a Southland with a 50-something RPI.
You would think not.
But again, that's what it is today. I'm not
Yep.
sure where it projects.
Yeah. By the way, we do have a change in the SWAC.
By the way, before we get there, the math does suggest Southeastern's RPI is likely to climb. Let's say they win 10 of their last 15, according to the needs report, that gets them into the top 45. If and they even have a path to top 32 if they really finish like 13 of 15. So I mean, like they could finish around 40 theoretically if they're really hot. Now,
Mm-hmm.
they're 30-9, so they could do it. Like they've basically won at that clip to this point. So it's worth thinking about. It's interesting.
Okay.
For now, we'll just keep all three of them on the board and we'll trim one, figure out who later. Okay, SWAC, go ahead, Kendall.
Yeah, we had Florida A&M last week. Florida A&M guys got swept by Bethune-Cookman over the weekend. Cookman now has a 3-game lead atop the conference standings.
Yeah.
Kudos to Jonathan Hernandez and the crew.
How about that? Okay. Summit League. We had North Dakota State, who lost this weekend at home against the mighty Bears of UNC, Northern Colorado. Oral Roberts would probably be the play here.
Yeah.
They just took 2 others from Omaha.
Yeah, what's your feeling on ORU, Fitt?
St. Thomas, by the way, is in first place, but as we discussed last week, not eligible.
2026.
So let's go Oral Roberts. Replaces North Dakota State.
Mm-hmm. And no change in the Sun Belt. Man, what a poor season for that league outside of the top 3.
Yeah.
What the 4th place team in the Sun Belt has a 166 RPI.
Yeah, wild.
Brutal.
Yeah, Coastal Troy and Southern Miss are the 3 there. And onward to the West Coast Conference, where Gonzaga did lose their weekend. 2 out of 3 at USC non-conference. But they're still in first place. I would still keep the Zags here. Although San Diego, guys, don't look now. San Diego has won 8 in a row. Remember how terrible they started the year? Oh my goodness. They had been, gosh, if they're 14-24 right now, that means they had been 6-24 at one point.
Weird.
And now they're 14-24, and they're up to 9-3 in the league, and just a game out of first place. Here come the Toreros. Look out.
Yeah, they were on the struggle bus.
Yeah. So don't be shocked if they wind up stealing that thing. They have some pedigree. And finally, the WAC. We had Utah Valley. We've got a 3-way tie here at the moment in the WAC for first place. Utah Valley lost 2 or 3 at home to Tarleton State. Grand Canyon, meanwhile, lost 2 out of 3 at Utah Tech. Does anybody want this bid? Sac State, do you want it? I think
Just
Sac
stick
State
with
might
Utah
want it.
Valley.
Sac State, though, just won 2 out of 3 against Cal Baptist. They've won 3 straight series. Let's go with Sac State, guys. Let's make the change.
Sure.
Yeah, that's right. Love your conviction there, KR.
So we now have 66 teams, and we need to trim 2. The teams that we have on the bubble include Miami. We have Iowa highlighted. I don't really think they're on the bubble, though.
That's more from last week.
Yeah. Florida, McNeese, UTRGV.
Let's trim one of the Southland teams.
Southeastern, yeah.
You think Southeastern?
It's just the RPI.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Let's.
UConn would need to be a bubble team.
UConn would be a bubble team.
Hold on, I did something wrong there.
I got you.
There you go.
Yeah, there's not a lot of vulnerable bubble teams here.
Yeah, we kind of trimmed as we went.
Yeah.
I would eliminate Sela.
You gotta go Florida. It comes down to Florida versus UConn, right? Or UTRGV. You could make Southland one bid, which it still may wind up being. I mean, they're having a nice year in that league, but
Yeah, I mean, we could play wait and see with Florida for another week.
yeah, they got Arkansas this week. Maybe if they win that series, you move them in. Make the SEC 12.
I mean, I might keep UConn out one more week.
I like
just
UConn's.
Just 21-17.
Yeah.
I mean, just not. I mean, 46 RPI. I mean, when in doubt with these bubble teams, if you're going to look at RPI, I mean, what's Florida?
24.
Yeah.
I mean,
Florida,
that's pretty
Florida,
stark difference.
How about this, though? Despite playing 19 games against Q1, Florida has just 5 Q1 wins. UConn has 6 Q1 wins in just 13 tries. Like, I mean, it's a lot harder to have more Q1 wins than Florida when you're UConn. I'm just saying that's hard to do.
Yeah, Florida just had that terrible start in conference play.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly agree that UConn is certainly not like a slam dunk. But I think I'm with you, Mark. I think I'm still on the let's wait a week on Florida and prove it a little bit more.
Kendall?
I mean, certainly it's very justifiable to say, hey, let's hold off on UConn still. That's certainly fine as well.
Yeah, man, that's a tough one for me. I mean,
is there anyone else to consider?
I don't think so. And I'm thinking at this point, Miami is well ahead of those teams.
Yeah. What about the Southland second team?
Yeah, that's the other option. Is you can make Southland one bid.
So let's look at that.
yeah. So let's look at like UTRGV for instance. Their high watermark for a weekend series win is currently, yeah, they would not get in. Their highest RPI series win is Lamar at 70.
Yeah. Whereas UConn does have a series win at Miami.
Yeah, I just don't think that's getting in.
I agree.
Yeah,
I really don't.
Yeah.
Even even with Jay on the committee, like I just don't think that's happening.
I agree. Feels like there's a little bit of a house of cards there that is yet to quite crumble in the RPI, but
yeah.
I don't know
19 road games for the Vaqueros is why the RPI is so high. And they won a lot of games. Vaqueros, yeah, whatever. 28 non-conference SOS. So,
yeah,
they're in the mix.
All right.
So that's our field.
Yeah.
Next 5.
Well, real quick, our at-large changes. Here's what I got.
Okay.
Miami replaces Virginia. UConn replaces UTRGV. And Florida replaces Mississippi State. 3 changes. Does that sound right to everybody? I think that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a bunch of AQ changes, which once again, it's just week after week, just like shuffle them in, shuffle them out. We got about nine changes there, which will be noted in the stock report.
Right. So with what I'm sharing now, guys, I had the next 4. I captured 5 as we went. Southeastern Louisiana, UTRGV, Mississippi State, Virginia, and Santa Barbara. We picked 4 of those.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Or if you keep 5, however you want to work it. But those were ones I captured as we went.
capture.
Yeah, I don't feel like, and this can be kind of our final thoughts, but like it just seems like there's not a lot of bubble contenders right now. A lot of compelling contenders overall.
Are you calling it a hashtag soft bubble?
Yeah, there you go.
Hashtag soft bubble. Which means like next week there's gonna be like 14 teams in the mix.
I feel like it's always like it's a rite of spring. Week 11 every year we get to a soft bubble, and we're always like, where are all the bubble teams? And then talk to us in 4 weeks. I'm like, oh God, the bubble, like it's hard.
And in their years where you start tournament week with a soft bubble.
Yeah, that's true.
Tuesday we do a field and it's this is easy. We breeze through it, and then by Friday it's like we don't have enough room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's been really interesting so far this year is like there are teams out there that have essentially eliminated themselves from the bubble already. Like East Carolina, for the most part, has eliminated itself. Baylor, for the most part, has kind of eliminated itself. Oklahoma State, I mean, unless they go on some sort of hellacious run, has eliminated itself. Michigan, just kind of going up the list here. Hawaii's probably not in a very good spot. So, I mean, things could change as these teams go on a run, but for now, they're not in a very advantageous spot.
Yeah. The main thing to keep an eye on, of course, will be, and we're still weeks away from this, but the stolen bids. And we've got one more potential stolen bid scenario with the Big West now having a conference tournament. If Irvine or Poly doesn't win that conference tournament, there's another stolen bid, for instance, but like, I don't know. I mean, as far as mid-major teams that are potential bid stealers, I mean, you've got Northeastern, you've got the Conference USA teams, Western Kentucky, Dallas Baptist, and then you've got maybe somebody in the Southland, McNeese potentially. I mean, something like that could happen. But like, I don't feel like there's a ton of these. Maybe the Sun Belt, if one of those top three doesn't win it. I don't think there's a ton though. I think there's fewer than usual.
Like in the Big 10 or the Big 12.
Sure, yeah.
Another example. Because it's so wide open.
Yep. That wide open, and these things are all going to single elimination.
Yeah, which does add an element of chaos that I'm kind of excited about.
Yeah,
I mean,
it'd be novel this year.
Yeah,
it'll only be one first year of it, so enjoy it. Yeah. Well, is that a show, guys? I think we have our field. Yeah. We'll true up the seeds here. We got a couple of things to work out there, but other than that, I think it was a good show.
Good show.
I do like that we dove in and looked at conference strength of schedule. That was one of the things I wanted to make sure we conveyed. And I think to you guys' point, the bubble right now is kind of soft, and we expect that to kind of take the roller coaster the rest of the year and end up being challenging like it always is. Any final thoughts from you guys?
No, I think we crushed it. An hour 13 minutes for Nerdcast. That's on the tidy side.
It's like 100 minutes last week.
Look at us.
All right. Well, that's a show, everybody. We'll come back to you again and do it again next week.